When I think of spring, pastel colors and delicate flowers come to mind. So in today's video, I thought it would be fun to share how to make this classic daisy granny square. As well as the step-by-step tutorial, I'll also be sharing how to make this zigzag stitch to join your squares together. This gives a beautiful braid-like effect to your join, and it is super easy to do. As always, there are timestamps along the progress line to help you navigate the video, so let's get started. For gauge, I used a worsted weight cotton yarn with a 4mm hook. Based on this hook and yarn, my squares came out to 4.5 by 4.5 inches. To make the center, we're going to be making 12 double crochets. You can either start with a magic ring or start with a chain 4 with a slip stitch to form your ring. I'm just going to start with a magic ring. And then once you've formed your ring, chain 3. This is going to serve as your first double crochet. I've already created a chain to create my magic ring. I'm going to count that and do 2 more. I do this because I prefer the height of it rather than doing that extra chain. Next, do 11 more double crochets into your ring. Yarn over, going into the ring, pull your yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Double check that you have 12. To complete the round, do a slip stitch into the top of your first chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Or you can do an invisible join. To do an invisible join, clip your yarn, pull the strand out, take your yarn and work into the top of that very first double crochet that you can clearly see, not the top of the chain 3, right here. Come back to the last double that you made and work your yarn into the back of the loop. And that creates your beautiful invisible join. To weave this in, I just go into the back. Going into a couple of stitches so that I can get down into the meat of the stitches. And then go into the opposite direction. And that stitch is not going to come out. To create our petals, we're going to be working with treble crochets and we're going to be creating popcorn stitches. That just means that we're going to do 3 treble crochets of the same stitch and then pull them together. So add a slip knot to your hook to begin. Next, go into any stitch that you choose. Create a slip stitch and then chain 3 or 4 to serve as your first treble crochet. Next, we're going to do 2 more treble crochets into the same stitch. Yarn over twice, working into the stitch, pull your yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's your first treble crochet. Let's do 1 more. Yarn over twice, working into the same stitch, pull your yarn through, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now to turn this into a popcorn stitch, remove the hook from the yarn, going into the top of that first chain 3 or 4, return to the loop and pull it through the stitch. And that's all there is to it. Chain 2. And now we're going to repeat this all the way around. 3 double crochets into the next stitch. The birds are loving this rain. Can you hear? 2, and 3. Again, release the hook from the yarn, working into the top of the very first treble that you made. Go in, go back to that loop, pull it through, and then chain 2. We're just going to repeat this all the way around until you have 12 popcorn stitches. To fasten off, you just want to come behind that first popcorn that you created and do a slip stitch to finish. Okay, great. And now we are ready for round 3. And now we're going to start creating our square. We're going to be working double crochets on the sides and treble crochets for our corners. So add a slip knot to your hook. Starting in any chain 2 space, fasten on, however you like best. And then chain 2 or 3 to serve as your first double crochet. I've just gone ahead and done 2 because I like the height of it. Next, do 2 double crochets into the same space. We're creating our first granny cluster. And a granny cluster just means that we're doing 3 double crochets into the same space. Let's create another granny cluster in the next chain 2 space. That's 3 double crochets. And now we're going to work our first corner. We're going to do 3 treble crochets, chain 2, 3 treble crochets. Chain 2, 3 treble crochets. And now we're just going to repeat that sequence. We're going to create a granny cluster into the next chain 2 space. That's 3 doubles. Let's make another one. 3 doubles into the same space. If you're finding that this is working too tightly for you, you can add a chain 1 in between these clusters. We're back to a corner, so that's 3 trebles, chain 2, 3 trebles. Now just repeat the sequence all the way around, forming your corners with 3 trebles, chain 2, 3 trebles. Do a cluster 2 times for your sides, and then followed with another corner all the way around. I've come to the end of the round, and to finish it, I'm just going to do a slip stitch into the top of the first chain 2 or 3. I only did 2, so I'm just going to go in the top of the second one there with a slip stitch. To begin round 4, I want to get myself into a space to create a cluster. So I'm just going to slip stitch my way across. To get into that space. And now I'm ready for round 4. Chain 2 or 3 to serve as your first double crochet. And then add 2 more doubles into the same space. Create your first granny cluster. And now this is super easy. We're just going to follow the same sequence, but instead of doing treble crochets in the corner, we're going to do double crochets instead. So let me do one more cluster for the side. And then here for my corner, I'm going to go down to a regular double crochet. It's 3 doubles. Chain 2, 3 doubles. We did trebles on round 3 just to get to the height that we needed, just to help us get that really nice even square. And we really don't need that now, we just want to straighten everything up even more. Here we are, we're going to skip over these trebles and into this next space. We're going to do a double crochet 3 times for our next cluster. And we're just going to continue adding clusters in these spaces until we reach the next corner. And again, remember we're just doing double crochets for our corners this time. So that's 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. And you're just going to repeat this all the way around. Cluster, 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 double crochet corners, cluster, 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 double crochet corners, and then I'll see you on the other side. I finished my last corner. I have one more space to do before we're finished. So it's just 3 more double crochets. To fasten off, add a slip stitch into the top of your first chain 2 or 3. I'm going to do an invisible join here just to show you that again. I think this is nice also because it will help with the joining technique that we're going to be doing. So just pull the yarn out, add it to a darning needle or a tapestry needle. And instead of working into the top of the chain 2 or 3, I'm going to skip over to the top of the very first true double that I made, going into the front of the top of the stitch, and then backtracking and going into the back of the previous stitch. There we go. And then I just go in, find my way down to a group of cluster stitches. I find that's a great place to hide these. And that bad boy is not going to come out. And that's all there is to it. To work this join, I recommend that you work in panels, meaning that you're going to do all of your horizontal joins at the same time before you move on to the verticals. For example, I have 6 squares here. I have them ready to go. I'm first going to join horizontally. And then when I'm finished with that, I'm going to turn everything around and work vertically. We're going to be working with a slip stitch for this join, so my biggest tip here is that you want to use a light touch. You don't want to pull too tight on your slip stitches or it's going to make your squares buckle in on each other. Like I mentioned before, I'm going to start working horizontally first. I'm going to be joining all of these squares on the horizontal line. So first I'll start with these 2 squares and then bring in these 2. Basically, we just want to make sure that we're lining these up together, so make sure that you have the same amount of stitches on both of your squares. For my corners, I have 2 chains in the corners, and so I'm just going to match this chain with this chain to join these together before I move on to the clusters. You can either work your stitch into the chain or around it. It's completely up to you. I'm just going to work around it because I'm actually going to be working in front of all of these stitches, not into the back stitch only. So I think that looks a little bit more cohesive. So to begin, with the right side facing you or the front of your work facing you, create a slip stitch into that chain or around it. And now you're just going to repeat this with the next square. I'm just going to go into this corner, or you can go into the chain itself, completely up to you, and work a slip stitch. So I'm going under, pulling my yarn through to create a slip stitch. We're just going to repeat this all the way across. We're going to start with our bottom square and then move to the square above us. So going into the next stitch, pull your yarn through and create a slip stitch. Now working on the square above us, we're just doing the same thing. We're just going to go into the stitch, pull the yarn through, and create a slip stitch. Again, remember not to be too tight with this and not too loose either. You want to find that sweet spot where it's just a nice even feel as you're working. Going into the stitch, pull your yarn through, create your slip stitch. Moving up top, going into the stitch, pull your yarn through, form a slip stitch. And as you can see, it's forming this really beautiful braid-like effect. Just a quick reminder here, the top of your stitch leans to the right if you're right-handed, making it look like the letter P. So I've actually finished my last stitch on this side and on this side as well. This is my very first chain, and this is my very first chain on the other square. So you can either work into the chain or around it, completely up to you. I'm just going to work around it, and the same for that side. And that join is complete. This is what it looks like on the other side. It's a very nice flat join. Now I'm just going to bring in the next set of squares and continue on working horizontally. And it's the same exact thing. I just finished on the top of this square, so I'm going to come down and work into this square. I only need to do one slip stitch to count for that half of the corner. And then I'm going to move on to the upper square. Bring it in, pull the yarn through, and slip stitch. Now don't worry about how this looks right now. We'll take care of that when we're working vertically. Our corners are joined, and now it's time to work into the regular stitches. So I just finished the upper square, so back down to the lower square. There we go. And continue on. If you're working a square that has chains in between your clusters, the same thing as you were doing with your corners, you can just go into the chain itself, or you can do a wraparound like I've been doing on the corners. Just see what you like best. So you'll have something that looks like this. And then you'll just continue on with all of your horizontal panels. And then when you're all finished with that, then it's time to do your verticals. And it's super easy. We're just going to continue on with the same thing. Just get everything into position. And now we're just going to start in a corner and work our way across. The closer you get to the intersection, a little more fiddly it does get. But again, just take your time. Just focus on getting that yarn through the best that you can, keeping an eye on your tension. Okay, I have 1 double crochet here and 1 double crochet here to do. There's one. Let's get that yarn. So we're back to our corner, and we do want to do a stitch into the corner, so we're just going to go in and go under that previous row of zigzags, pull the yarn through, and create your slip stitch. Same for the one above. Go in, pull your yarn through, and create a slip stitch. Now for this corner, we're going to do the same thing. Go in, pull the yarn through, create your slip stitch, go in, pull your yarn through, create your slip stitch. And this is going to give you a very secure join. And then we just continue on as we were doing, just going into that first double, pull through, first double, pull through, and continue on. And we're all finished. If you're wondering what kind of edging or border to do with this, I would recommend trying the Zig Zag Border. It's not exactly like the Zig Zag Join, but it's close enough and it will really pull it all together. To begin, create a foundation border of single crochets. I did 3 single crochets for my corners, and then for these joins here, I did 2 single crochets in one corner and 1 single crochet in the other. That seemed to work the best for me, but play around with that to see what gives you the straightest edge. And then for the zigzag round, it's super easy. You're just going to go into each stitch with a slip stitch and a chain 1. Slip stitch, chain 1, slip stitch, chain 1. All the way around in every stitch. And this will give you a really nice zigzag border. Thanks a lot for spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.